Thanks, Derek. Good morning, everyone. And thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to once again chat with you about my thoughts on the Tao and life in general. My topic today I'm calling The Medium is the Message. It's been a while since I've spoken with you. We had some temple meetings that were postponed, or rather, we had other activities, and I myself have had a lot going on in my life. So I really appreciate coming back to you. Before I went away, I got some really good feedback from my previous presentations, thanks to Derek. I believe he did a great job in parsing it. And some folks had mentioned that you tune in to listen to my thoughts and not necessarily some of the other clips or videos that I would share with you. In addition, because of the communication and the platform that we're using, sometimes the people who would listen in later during the recordings, the video could get choppy and it just was distracting. And I completely understand. I very much appreciate that feedback. I definitely work on improving my speaking style for sure. I know Derek has been a proponent of Toastmasters in the past. Other friends of mine have gone through similar programs to be a better speaker. And more importantly, I try to practice this in my own profession to make the presentations as clear and simple and effective as possible. So I appreciate that feedback, and it's definitely, over the past few weeks, given me some insight into my own self-reflection and trying to think about what I am saying and why I've been given this great opportunity to have a platform to share my thoughts and explore myself with you. It's interesting in talking about this presentation, even with Frank, as I was preparing it, thinking how much life has changed. I mean, even today, I'm sitting here in my bed and giving you this presentation, and yet I have access to millions of information data points at my fingertips. We have a tablet and we have Wi-Fi, and even when we're not at home and on the road, I can still have access to so much information. And it's incredible. It's wonderful to have this medium at our fingertips, where years before, even 2 years ago, it was not so convenient to be able to access all this information on the go at any moment. And with that, I'm also reminded of the fact that change is happening so fast. Used to be that all we had information access to was the printed word, newspaper and books, and then we had radio and television, and I'm even thinking of a book that I read about 10 years ago, Harry Potter series, and how in that book they had descriptions of newspaper articles with images that moved and how fantastic it was, but it was magic, so it definitely made sense. And now we have that very same phenomenon, but we call them GIFs. So this one image that just cycles through, but it's multiple images strung together. And all of these different services that allow us to share and communicate with each other is just fantastic, and trying to make sense of it in terms of what my presentations are to you as well, and how to use this platform of a PowerPoint, a microphone, an internet connection, and you, my audience, how that can be transformed and expanded on so that we can learn more about the Tao. In preparing this presentation, the topic and the subject line is from Marshall McLuhan. He wrote a book a long time ago called Understanding Media, and you may have heard this. It's really his catchphrase, his essentially entombed, or rather on his tombstone, this is the phrase that everybody thinks of, and yet it is so moving and captivating. I'm just going to go ahead and read. This is from his book, the beginning section of it. In a culture like ours, long accustomed to splitting and dividing all things as a means of control, it is sometimes a bit of a shock to be reminded that, in operation and practical fact, the medium is the message. This is merely to say that the personal and social consequences of any medium, that is, of any extension of ourselves, results from the new scale that is introduced into our affairs by each new extension of ourselves, or by any new technology. It's quite a fascinating phrase, and the more I dig into it, the more profound it becomes, this idea of the medium. And if we can just kind of step back for a moment, what he meant here, and from some of my research and my reading, is that, like the medium of dirt, it's a growing medium for a plant, the medium itself, whether it's television, radio, what have you, creates an environment that we therefore fill with content. So Bill earlier was mentioning televangelists on television. Another television moment you may have recently experienced is watching the evening news and maybe seeing a story about crime. And so that content is what we may focus on, that is what is obvious, and that is what's delivered to us through the medium of television. But it's not necessarily the transformation that we notice. We notice the story itself, but not necessarily the change in our climate or in our personal attitude towards what we perceive as safety. And that innovation, I think, and that insight is the most important aspect of this phrase, the medium is the message. In that the message, of course, is the change in perceptions, the ripples through our society that the medium creates. And I think we're still grappling with that in terms of electronic media, newspaper now being online and having moving images and video, and everything is just blending together, and how we are being profoundly changed in this global village that we now have access to, thanks to the new media of the internet and connectivity. And so I'm not sure that I have a more deep insight into it, other than that I thought it was fascinating, this new medium that we're all sharing and creating. And it's wonderful to think that finally, we had thoughts early on when I first joined the temple of taking the word of the Tao out to the world, and how exactly we would do that. And it feels that we have a great momentum happening now, and you're listening to me, and hopefully we will have really great conversations in the future going forward that will enhance all of our lives as we share the knowledge of the Tao and our life stories and our successes. So definitely thank you and welcome more insights from you as I can continue to prepare my presentations. Coming up soon on the next Carmen's Corners, I want to explore so many aspects, and I definitely want to let you know that in the coming few weeks and months, summer is coming, and I will take that opportunity to dive deep, to go somewhat dark. I will be discussing death, one of the most downer aspects of life is the opposite, considering death. Slavery, still with us, and that legacy of using others for our own gain, even today still happens. Disasters, natural disasters that will always happen, and what we are doing to the earth and how it is responding to us. And yet I still want to go back, and in the end of the summer and towards the fall, I'll return to happier topics like love and happiness and success, and how that is manifested in my own life, and hopefully sharing some aspects that may help you in your life. And then also I'll be throwing in some wacky things like my musings on eyeballs and comedy and information and data. So I look forward to preparing those presentations for you, and I hope that I will be able to adequately use this new medium that we have sharing together here. And with that, I'm going to leave you with a recipe. I really appreciate that synchronicity we have with our presentations, and Bill's presentation earlier about simplifying and simplicity. And as I was preparing this talk and trying to keep it simple, keep it concise, and thinking of the recipe, I thought, well, what is the most simple thing out there than bread, the staff of life? And yet, even having such limited ingredients, the most complex and wonderful things can come of them, and yet that still takes talent. So I'm thinking of a really wonderful crusty loaf of French bread, a baguette that you can really only get from a proper French bakery, or even a crusty rustic Italian loaf. Yet again, simple ingredients, but would take mastery of many, many years to really achieve the results that you may not at home. So starting off, hopefully you'll be able to take on this challenge and to do something simple. The simplest bread that we can make, and the most tasty, is just pizza. So taking about a cup and a half of lukewarm water, so a little warmer than your own body temperature. A package of active dry yeast. You combine that with some salt and sugar in a bowl. Let it ferment for a moment. And then you can add your olive oil and bread flour. You can use all-purpose flour, but the bread flour really improves the gluten aspects of it. I know that some folks are more aware of gluten sensitivity, so this doesn't really work if you're not going to use gluten-free bread. Maybe there's some other recipes, but in terms of a really great simple crust, that's about all you need. You combine it all into a bowl, take it out of the bowl once it's a nice mass that you can use, or rather manipulate, and knead that for about 10 minutes. It takes a little workout, but whatever aggression you may have had during the week, you can let it out there. And then here's the key as well. You can cover it and place it in the refrigerator overnight. So simple, just let it double. The next day you can take it out, divide it up, and let it rest for a moment before you roll it out into the shape that you want and top it with whatever you want, basil sauce or tomato sauce. You can omit the cheese if you want to keep it vegan. The important part here again is to bake it at a very high temperature, as high as your oven will allow. Mine only goes up to 450. But put it on a pizza stone if you have one, otherwise just a plain cookie sheet that's lined hopefully with parchment, something you can easily take it off, for about 8 to 10 minutes. And it's really all about the senses, just experiencing the bread as you're kneading it, experiencing the ingredients as you top it, don't go overboard, and then also just continuing to check in on it as you pull it out. Eventually you'll find yourself being very comfortable making pizza. It's such an easy thing to do, and it's also very inexpensive. So with that, I'm going to return it to Derek. Thank you, everyone.